Hi guys, today we're doing lesson 10-2 and that starts on page 481. Today I'd like to give a shout out to the following people: Annabelle, Mason, Andrew, Callie, Emily, Grayson, Lyric, Hannah, Kaylee, Brady, Mason, Carson, Miranda, John, Josh, Claire, Matthew, Alexa, Olivia, Isaac, Gurley, Anakin, Cohen, Alexis, Savannah, AJ, Katie, Bryce, Kate, and Brandon. That should take care of everyone. So now you have all had a shout out. Congratulations. So today we're looking at unit rates. So we've talked about ratios and we've talked about rates, and now we're focusing on unit rates. So I want to make sure we understand what those three things are before we jump into today's lesson. So I know this isn't in your book, but I thought this would help us out. A ratio just compares two different quantities. So if I wanted to say, okay, how many oranges are in this basket compared to how many is in that basket, maybe my ratio would be like 8-4. So ratios just compare two different things. And they wouldn't have to both be baskets of oranges. This one could be a basket of apples, but it's just comparing two different things. When I look at a rate is a special ratio that compares two different quantities that contain two different units. So a ratio can compare things like oranges to oranges, or it can compare oranges to apples. When we get to rates, they are a ratio that compare two different things. So if I'm looking at this can of cornstarch, it's going to compare the ounces to the price. So money and ounces are two different units, okay? If I'm doing time, I might have miles and time, and those are two different units that I would use to find miles per hour, which is a rate that we'll work with in this chapter. And then today we're going to focus on unit rate, which is a comparison that focuses on one unit. So if I wanted to know what 1 unit or 1 ounce of this cornstarch costs, I could take my price and divide it by the number of ounces to find the price per 1 ounce. And if I look at this handy dandy picture from, I'm assuming, Walmart, it will tell you the unit price on a sticker at Walmart. So it tells me that it's 13.5 cents per ounce. And that's what we're going to be finding today as unit prices, or the number that would be right here if we were at Walmart. Because if you take in a calculator and you put in 88 cents and you divide it by 6.5, you will get 13.5 cents. So that is what we are going to look at today. I like unit rates because unit rates typically have to do with money and or speed, miles per hour, both of which I think we can all say are two fun things: speed and money. So today's solvent share says Galena's high-speed model train can travel 10 meters in 4 seconds at a constant speed. How far can the train travel in 30 seconds? Solve the problem any way you choose. So down here they give us a chart and they've set it up, and they say her train can go 10 meters in 4 seconds. Now 4 cannot multiply evenly into 30. So that makes this a little bit tricky because we've been used to the ratio charts where it goes up by 4s until we hit the number that 4 would go into. So today's a little bit trickier because 4 can't go into 30 evenly. So what we have to do is figure out what our unit rate is, or how many meters her train can go in 1 second. And then if I can figure that out, I can multiply it to figure out how far it can go in 30 seconds. So if I'm going from 4 to the 1, I drew an arrow here. If I'm going from 4 to 1, how do I do that mathematically? Well, I would have to divide by 4, okay? So whatever I do, I know that division sign is really kooky. Whatever I do on the bottom to get from this column to this column, I've got to do the same thing on the top. So I've got to do 10 divided by 4. So if you were to punch that into a calculator, you would get 2.5 or 2.5. So her train can go 2.5 meters in 1 second. So then, because we said it's really hard to go from 4 to 30, it's not going to multiply in evenly, what I'm going to do is shrink my arrow here. I'm going to go from 1 to 30. So how would I get from 1 to 30? I would multiply by 30, okay? So if I take 1 and I multiply it by 30, I get 30. Whatever I do on the bottom, I'm going to do the same thing on the top. So I'm going to go from 2.5 to my next column by multiplying by 30. So if you were, again, in your calculator to put in 2.5 times 30, you would get 75. So her train can go 75 meters in 30 seconds. So today that's kind of what they're going to have you do is figure out the unit rate or the how far something can go in 1 second or what 1 ounce of something will cost. And then once you know that number, you could multiply it to figure out if I want to know how far her train could go in an hour, I could multiply it by the number of seconds to do that. Or if I want to know how far her train could go in a minute, I could do 1 times 60, I could do 2.5 times 60. So finding the unit rate just makes it easier to figure out more numbers that would be out here without making a huge long table. So it says, explain how finding the distance that the train can go in 1 second helps you solve the problem. So once we found that it took her 1 second, then we just multiplied both the top and the bottom numbers by 30, and that made it really easy. So I've typed that up there. You need to write this down. So if you need to pause the video to get that down, pause it now. I'm going to go on to the next page. A unit rate is what we talked about back on our vocabulary page. It says it's a rate in which the comparison is to 1 unit. A bicycle group travels 320 miles in 5 days. How far could they travel in 8 days if they maintain the same rate of speed? So again, 5 is not going to multiply into 8 exactly. So we're going to figure out how far the group can go in 1 day, and then I can take that amount and multiply it by 8. So they show using a double number line for this, so they filled in the information they know. So they knew that in 5 days, the group went 320 miles. We're trying to figure out how far the group went in 8 miles. So it says the first step that we're going to do is take 320 miles and divide it by the 5 days. That way I can figure out how far they went in each day. So once they divided that, they got 64. So they can go 64 miles in 1 day. So I could fill in 64 on this double number line if I wanted to. And then once I know that, I can multiply both my top and my bottom by 8, because 1 day times 8 days would give me 8 days, and I could do 64 times 8 to figure out my miles, and they did that over here. So 64 times 8 is 512 miles. So everything we do today, we're basically going to be taking our ratios and dividing it to find our unit rates. So it says a canoeing club travels 78 miles in 3 days. How far could they travel in 5 days if they maintain the same speed? Explain your thinking. So the first thing I need to do is figure out their speed for 1 day. So I'm going to take the 78 miles they went in 3 days and I'm going to divide it. So I'm going to do 78. And again, I'm writing with my mouse here, so if this is super sloppy, I apologize. So we're going to do 78 miles and divide it by 3 days to figure out how many miles they can go in 1 day. So that means if you were to divide that, they're going to go 26 miles per day. Okay? So I'm going to put MPD, miles per day. So if they go 26 miles in 1 day, I could do 26 times the number of days we need, which is 5, to get the total number of miles that they would go. So if you multiplied that, you would get 130. So it asked me to explain my thinking. So what we did was we found the unit rate, which was 26 miles per day, and multiplied that by the number of days that we needed. So I'll make this fit in this box here. Whoa. So if you need to pause the video to get that down, you can pause it. I'm going on to the next page. Okay, on the guided practice, it says a bathroom shower streams 5 gallons of water in 2 minutes. Find the unit rate for gallons per minute and describe it in words. So if I want gallons per minute, that means I need to take the gallons, divide it by the minutes. So I'm going to do 5 divided by 2, which half of 5 would be 2.5. So I know that this shower can do 2.5 gallons per 1 minute. So that would be describing it in words. Okay? So I'm telling the number of gallons that it can do in one. So a unit rate is always going to have one something, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 ounce, whatever. There's always going to be something that's going to be 1. So it says find the unit rate for minutes per gallon and describe it in words. So this time they're flip-flopping it. So if I want my minutes per gallon, I'm going to do my minutes, and I'm going to divide that by the gallon. So 2 divided by 5 would be 2/5, or that decimal that would be equal to would be 0.4. So in 0.4 minutes is how long it's going to take for 1 gallon to pour out into that shower. Okay, so 2/5 or 0.4 minutes per 1 gallon. So now it wants to know how many gallons of water does the shower stream in 6 minutes. So if it does 2.5 in 1, all I've got to do to figure out how much it pours out in 6 minutes is to multiply the 2.5 by 6 to figure that out. So I could do 2.5 times 6, and that would give me 15 gallons. That's a lot of water in 6 minutes. How long can someone shower in order to use only 10 gallons of water? So if I know that it can take 0.4 minutes for 1 gallon, in order to get this to be 10 gallons, I would multiply it by 10. So if I did 0.4 and multiplied that by 10, it's going to move my decimal 1 place. So it's going to take 4 minutes to use 10 gallons of water. So let's take a look at some of these together. I'll do a couple and I'll leave a couple for you guys to do. I'll do number 6. I'll leave 4 and 5 for you guys to try on your own. So it says there's 150 stacks for 50 students. So I need to divide both the top and the bottom number by the same thing. So I'm going to divide my 150 stacks by 50 students. And I'm going to divide my 50 students by 50 students. So for every 1 student, they will get 3 snacks because 150 divided by 50 is 3. For this one, you're just dividing 54 by 3 to get your answer. On these, they want us to complete the table. So we've got to figure out how did they get from 18 to 1. If I'm going backwards, that means division. So I've got to do 18 divided by 1. So on the top, that means I've got to do 9 divided by 18, which would be a half, because 9 is half of 18. So in 1 minute, this person can read half a page. So then I've got to figure out how did they get from 1 to 10. They had to have multiplied by 10. So whatever they do on the top or on the bottom, you're going to do the same thing on the top. So 1 times 10 is 10. A half times 10 would be 5. That's half of 5. Half of 10 is 5. And then to get from 1 to 15, that would be multiplying by 15. So to get from half to 15, or to this box, I would have to do a half and multiply that by 15, and that would give me 7.5. Okay, so these, we're used to our ratio tables going up by a certain amount each time. This time we've got to figure out what they're going up by because they kind of jump around. Okay, I'll do number 11. I'll leave 9 and 10 for you guys to try. So when we're looking at these, we want to find the place where there is a number on the top and the bottom. So if I have 125 pages and 125 miles per 5 gallons of gas, if I divide 125 by 5, that will give me my miles I can go on 1 gallon of gas. So if you divide this, you're going to get 25. So I can go 25 miles on 1 gallon of gas. So to get from 1 to 3, I'm multiplying by 3. So 25 times 3 would be 75. To get from 1 to 12, I've got to multiply by 12. So I'm going to do 25 times 12 on the top. And if you do 25 times 12 on the top, you would get 300 gallons on, or 300 miles for 12 gallons of gas. So for this one, my hint would be to divide 186 by 3 to figure out this one, and then you can multiply accordingly. On this one, I would use this to divide, so I do 24.6 divided by 2, so I could figure out this one. So I will leave you guys to try 4, 5, I should have filled in a 3 there, 7, 9, and 10 on your own. And let's take a look at the last page. So on the last page, I want you guys to try to do 12, 13, 15, and 16. So you do not have to do 14, 17, and 18. So tomorrow I will check to see that you guys have done this, and we'll talk tomorrow. See you then.